Hello, in this video I'm going to explain why driving anxiety makes no sense. This is something many people ask me about and they say, look, this is just weird. I've got this fear of driving and it's just come on and I don't understand it because you say in your videos that it's got nothing to do with driving, but it has because when I drive I get scared. So I'm going to explain more about where this comes from. My name's Paul and I work online with people all over the world to help them overcome their fear of driving. And in my videos I do often say that driving anxiety has nothing to do with driving. And this is what gets some people confused or even annoyed and mad. And they say, look, when I go out driving my car I get anxious, so it must be something to do with driving. What you need to understand is that driving is just the trigger. The trigger is what sets the problem off, but it's not the problem itself. Now, it doesn't matter whether this is a fear of driving in the dark, driving over bridges, driving at high speed. It doesn't even have to be with driving. This can be things like a lack of confidence in public speaking, lack of confidence in relationships, any kind of issues like weight loss, insomnia. What you have to understand is that the problem isn't the problem. The problem is the trigger. So it's what sets off the problem. It isn't the problem itself. So let me explain this in more detail. Let's imagine that you have a problem where every time you drive at speed on a highway, you start to have a panic attack and you shake and sweat and feel terrible, and you're convinced that it's because of the driving. What's actually happening is that when you were driving one day, for some reason which you may never know, you remembered something from your past. This could be that you saw something that reminded you of it, you heard something, it could have been a smell in the air, it could have been a song on the radio, it could be anything. You never really get to know what it was, but something reminded you of something from the past. Your mind then fired up that old feeling, that old emotion, and now, because you've had that emotion and feeling when you're driving, the two things become linked. So you see, the driving isn't the problem. It never is, and I can guarantee you 100%, if you've got a driving phobia, it's nothing to do with driving. I can guarantee you that 100%, all of the time, no exceptions ever. And this is why exposure therapy won't work, because you're forcing yourself into the trigger. You're making the trigger happen. This is why driving lessons, driving instructors, it won't do anything to fix the problem, because that isn't the problem. You're working on the trigger, and working on the trigger won't do anything. A good way of thinking about this is one example that all of us can relate to. One of the most powerful forms of hypnosis there is: music. We've all got a song that makes us feel sad or happy or some kind of emotion. But let's just say that there's a song that makes you feel sad. And you might think you've got a problem with that song, where you haven't, because in the same way that driving anxiety has nothing to do with driving, not liking that song has got nothing to do with the song. The song is merely the trigger. So it's setting off an emotion from the past. So let's just say that it sets off an emotion because that song was playing at a funeral. But you see, this is where people go wrong, and I've made many of the videos going into more detail about this element. It's not that simple. Just because the song was playing at the funeral, it may be that yes, you were sad because someone had died, but why? Maybe it's because you'd had an argument with that person just before they died. But it goes back further. Maybe that argument was because of something you did the week before that. And the reason you did that is because of a belief you had, and that belief came from your parents because they said something to you when you were a kid, when you were doing something else. You see how it goes back and back and back and back and back. So this fear of a song, or this dislike of the song because it makes you sad, is all because of something that happened in your childhood. It's not as simple as just going back one step. There are often many steps that you have to go back through to find the original cause. this is where people understandably get confused. They say, look, this just doesn't make any sense. You're telling me that it's all about this thing in the past, but it must be about the driving. No. Here's a massive thing to remember, and if you only take one thing away from this video, let it be this. You can't fix an unconscious problem with a conscious solution. And this is what's so funny. So many people say, but I've been thinking about this for years and I've seen therapists and I've done this and I've done this and it doesn't make any sense. Well, can you not see what the problem is? You're trying to make it make sense. What I do is to accept it doesn't make sense and work with that, because then you're working with the problem instead of against it. And when you work with the problem, you'll be able to find out what it really is. And here's the really funny thing. Having just said that trying to make sense of it won't work, the way you get rid of the problem is to make sense of it. Isn't this getting confusing? We see, the thing is, let's just say that I said to you originally, let's just say that you came to me and said, you've got this fear of driving. And let's use the same example we did for the music, just so I don't have to make up another one. Let's just say that your fear of driving began after a funeral, and we go back and back and back in time. If I just said to you, your fear of driving is because when you were a kid, this happened. That doesn't make any sense. People say, well, that's stupid. How can that have anything to do with driving? That's just crazy and you're weird and this is bizarre. It doesn't make sense because you've gone right from the very end, the trigger, to the very beginning, which is called the anchor. The anchor is the state that comes up when you panic. So if you go straight from the trigger to the anchor, it won't make any sense. If I go around telling people, hey, your fear of driving comes from when you were a kid and you dropped an ice cream on the floor and your parents shouted at you, it sounds crazy that you think, well, what? How could that work? What you have to do is go through every single step in order. So you go from the funeral to the argument, to the event before that, to the one before that, and it then will make sense because you're putting all the pieces of the puzzle together in the correct order. So you see, it's a bit of a contradiction. Although your problem doesn't make any sense at all, it will when you find out what the cause of it is. Because although I say in my videos that the unconscious mind is irrational and illogical and crazy, really it's not. It's just that it thinks differently. So let me sum all this up because I know it's a little bit confusing. Your problem won't make sense because it isn't to do with driving, but what it really is to do with is so far removed from driving that if you just go straight to that, it won't make any sense. It's like building the bridges between two cliffs. You can't just take a running jump and clear it in one go. You have to build a bridge bit by bit by bit so you can cross that ravine. And that's what I do in my work. I help people build that bridge. And this is why when people say, can it be done in one session? Well, yes, because sometimes you get to the answer very quickly. You build the bridge quickly. At other times, it isn't that simple. And the final thing I'd like to point out is a common misconception people have, which is that they think that the way you get rid of a fear of driving is to stop it coming on in the first place. Well, that isn't what happens. What actually happens is when you go out driving, the trigger will still be there. So you may start to feel a bit anxious when you start to drive at speed. The difference is that the anchor is no longer there. So although you may start to feel anxious and you may start to feel a bit shaky, it will just stop. And this is where people go wrong because they start to get the slightest bit of discomfort and say, it didn't work. It has worked. It's just that you can't load the problem because you see what happens is when you go back in your mind and you make yourself realise that was back then, this is now, that's got nothing to do with driving. The problem disconnects. So it can't load, but the trigger is still there. Think of it like having an app on your phone. You can still have the icon on your screen and you can press it, but it won't load because you've deleted all the files associated with it. So yes, it looks like it's still there, but it won't actually load. And this is such a weird feeling to go through because I've experienced this myself. when I got over a problem and the therapist says, I want you to think about your problem, and you're thinking about it and you're thinking, well, hold on, why am I not getting scared? I can start to feel a bit shaky and then it just doesn't happen. And it's the most beautiful, wonderful and bizarre feeling when you've had a problem ruining your life for years and years and years, and then suddenly, when you're in that situation, it just doesn't happen. But what can happen is that sometimes people fix the problem and then they go looking for it so much they keep thinking, where's it gone, where's it gone? Guess what happens? Yep, they can even bring it back because your mind thinks, well, if you really want it, I'll give it to you. But that is a story for another video. Check out these other videos on the screen now for more help, and if you want to work with me one-to-one online from anywhere in the world, contact me through my website, firstdrive.com. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you again soon for more videos.